Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Massive Breakdown Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mercules. This is episode 43. We have a wonderful, wonderful episode planned for you a couple of days before the Destiny 2 reveal. But in the meantime, we're going to be buying some time, giving you some tips and tricks for the Crucible. As you know, we've done a couple of parts before, what to focus on before a game, what to focus on during a game. Now we're going to tell you what not to focus on during the game, what not to do. But let's knock the introductions out. We have a fabulous guest today. Really excited to have him. But first, Kit Kutcha, as always, how are you doing, my man?
Merc, I'm doing fantastic. It's been a long day, and honestly, I'm just so excited to be relaxing, talking about some Destiny with some awesome people, and I can't wait to dig into it. It's, I've been looking for an excuse to tell somebody no today, and this is it. This is it. You guys get ready. How about you, man?
We are absolutely ready. Absolutely ready. And I'm great. It's a Monday, so it's as good as Mondays go. But let's talk about our famous guest, the celebrity, the one, the only, FamousBirds. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to do a podcast with someone other than the same two jerk-offs I always do a podcast with. So nice to change it up. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you here. And, I've heard terrible, terrible things about those two guys, but yet you do a podcast with them every single week.
Yes. So I'm from the podcast Crucible Radio, the show for all things Destiny PvP, along with my best friends. I'll admit it. They are my best friends, which is why I get to call them jerk-offs. Bones and Swain. Maybe you know them. Yeah, we've been doing the show Crucible Radio for a long time. That kind of started off as us really figuring out for ourselves how to get our heads on straight in the Crucible, how to stop dying so much and start making not just the initial improvement you make when you learn how to use a controller, but keep improving and getting over those plateaus. And somehow we've managed to keep talking about it for about 100 episodes. So yeah, always happy to come share the love.
Yeah, I think I was actually just on your 99th episode. So all you listeners out there who want an absolutely fantastic podcast, actually the first podcast I started listening to in the Destiny community was Crucible Radio. So
thanks, man.
We got that connection. We're happy to do the podcast host swap thing with you guys. But let's ask you some questions. Let's get the listeners to really know the true birds, the deep down birds, right?
Sure. Okay. Well, it's all just an alter ego, so I don't know how much is real there. But let's go. Yeah, let's do it.
Right. As much as the alter ego can tell us.
Go listen to episode 99 featuring Mercules. We I think it was a pretty good interview. We really got into I don't know, into some of the deep stuff. I guess you guys do it here every week, but that was a blast to talk to. And you are the last interview before the big blowout that is episode 100. So a momentous episode to show up on.
I'm stoked. That's like the crowning achievement. But so you talked about you started Crucible Radio basically as an attempt to get yourselves better at Destiny. What was your background in games and FPSs before Destiny? Did you come from Halo? Were you one of the Bungie guys, or did you migrate from something else?
I was not. I mean, I've always liked gaming. I played PC games growing up. I never had a very good computer, so it was a lot of, Counter-Strike 1.6 and a lot of different shooters. I played a lot of GoldenEye on N64, just like everyone else growing up.
So much GoldenEye.
You just learn the basics there. You really get it figured out. And then from there, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I bought my friend's PlayStation 3 from him. He's trying to get rid of it. And I had never played console shooters before. I dabbled a bit and went, wow, this is way difficult compared to mouse and keyboard. And I kind of just started working my way through the catalog. The game that really got its hooks into me, the FPS that really did it, was Borderlands 2. When I got that game, and I didn't even play with other people. I lived in Hawaii at the time, so I had no huge latency to every other player of the game. But I really explored every inch of that game and really learned how to, just the basic mechanics of playing an FPS on console. And I actually wasn't a day one Destiny player. I like the Halo games, but they'd never really been my thing. I got the PS4 and I sort of was sick of Borderlands, and I was at the GameStop and I saw this game Destiny that I kind of heard about, and I'd watched a couple streams, but I figured, all right, I know this is the kind of game that captures people's souls, and I probably could go for that right now. And picked it up, and yep, I was in it. and I was terrible at first. I will make no illusions about that. But yeah, it all kind of grew from there. I never thought though that I'd be a podcaster in this world, much less any good at the game. But yeah, it was kind of love at first sight from that first time playing it. So after that, I sort of figured out everything I could figure out about the game on my own. I had played all of the missions. I knew all the strikes inside and out, and I was just starting to dabble in PvP. I was always kind of intimidated by it because, I didn't understand how anything worked. I didn't understand how overshields work or how special ammo really worked in the Crucible. I didn't know any of the angles, and I was always getting sniped out of the blue. And I was wanting to learn more about it and spent a lot of time reading on Reddit and a lot of time reading on the internet. But the thing that was always kind of frustrating for me is that, Destiny the game is an amazing subreddit and there's so much going on there, but you have players of every stripe, and it was kind of difficult to just have the conversation about how do I get better at PvP? Like, I have no suggestions for how to make the game better. I like your art, I like your clips, but I just want to talk with other nerds. Tell me what the callouts are. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Watch my gameplay and critique me. And there just wasn't really a place for it. And so I started Crucible Playbook subreddit back in, I guess it's been a while now.
I'll be honest.
April 2 years ago?
I was going to say, I don't specifically recall there not being a Crucible Radio or a Crucible Playbook subreddit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think... I kind of came in with a set of rules, but it was definitely right place at the right time because the idea got posted and we were hitting, thousands of posters a month later. I got lucky with it because people wanted to have that conversation.
Yeah.
There definitely needed to be a place, man. I mean, I know they say Bungie.net is like drinking from the fire hose when you're like on the forums there.
Oh, yeah.
And Destiny, the game, can sometimes feel like it too. The moderation team does a fantastic job of keeping it under control, but
Absolutely.
There's still a lot to sort through. There aren't too many Crucible-centric posts that regularly make the front. And I remember as soon as I saw Crucible Playbook, I was all over it. I was like, this is definitely my second home right now on Reddit because... the only reason I'm on Reddit at all was for Destiny, basically.
Yep.
And when I saw Crucible Playbook, and I was like, these are the people I want to be talking to. Like, these are the people who do the numbers, who do the stats, who do the perks. Like, these are my people. So I'm there every single day. I've got 2 tabs pulled up, one on each screen at work, and I've got Destiny the game and Crucible Playbook, and I'm looking at both of them all the time. So thank you so much for creating that sub.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just a different thing, right? Like, I just pulled them up. There's 300,000 plus subscribers to Destiny the game, and there's 30,000 subscribers to Crucible Playbook. There's literally 10 times more people in the big sub, and that's kind of fine because it's like you don't post clips there. You don't post suggestions. You don't post a lot of stuff. About all we had was a super restrictive set of rules and moderation guidelines that say, let's have just high quality conversation about whatever the game is we have today. And all the other conversations are interesting and I like participating in them, but we'll just do them someplace else. Let's just talk about getting better. And yeah, it kind of took off out from under me. We brought in some other moderators to help out. And then one day some guy posted this post that said, hey, I would love to start a podcast about the Crucible. I'm a cook. I listen to podcasts all day. And there's nothing in the Destiny world that quite scratches that itch. Is anyone else interested in doing it? And one guy was like, oh, I'll do it. Watch my montage. I'm Bones. And then I saw it and thought, I don't know if I'm ready for that commitment, but I at least want to check it out. And we all got together and played a couple matches. I remember the first match Bones, Swain, and I played was on Asylum, and Bones was going off. I was barely keeping up. And we kind of just figured it out. And yeah, so Swain gets all the credit for sort of starting this thing, but yeah, it's been a pretty simple formula, to be honest. We just try and talk and have a good conversation, but also just be honest about our own shortcomings in this game and try and figure out how to get past them. And that's a conversation I think most people can kind of identify with. Like, no matter where you are, even the best players, everyone's got something they could do better. Everyone's got something that they're working on. So yeah, here we are, somehow filled up 100 episodes.
So I want to jump back a little bit because one of the questions that I have, well, I guess so. I really appreciate the tight set of moderation rules on Crucible Playbook because, I mean, to be honest, I kind of started off the same way or a similar way to you in Destiny. I was not a day one player. I came in and I really enjoyed the PvE. I was interested in PvP, but all my friends had been playing since the beta nightly for 4 hours a night. And so they were all, I mean, there was skill-based matchmaking at the time, right? So I was just getting trashed. It was just an exercise in brutality at my expense. But there came a point where I kind of, got my sea legs a little bit, started to understand that, if I didn't put my head in front of the sniper, I wasn't going to die as much. And I started looking for a place where I could learn a little bit more about the numbers, because that's something that I'm really into. I'm really into documenting things out in a way that's understandable, that's easy to read. I have a degree in writing, but I started off as a computer science major, so I kind of bring some different interests to play, and I really appreciated finding just how well organized it was, and the tighter focus means that if I want to figure out, hey, what's the comparison between these two weapons? Somebody's made a post about that, and I don't have to sort through 100,000 montages to get to it. How did you come up with that rule set? Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, well, I mean, I think kind of what you're describing is, I identify strongly with what you said. I'm a computer geek. I'm a guy who likes writing. And I definitely like to kind of be, I mean, I'm on the Massive Breakdown podcast. We like to be systematic with this. Like, there is like the pure adrenaline of just like warrioring and going clutch. But you don't always have that. And so in the meantime, I like to have an intellectual understanding of it. And so I kind of just thought about what I would, what would a forum that had lots of space for a voice like that look like? And sort of went with there. A lot of it was, and I don't mean this in a negative way because it's just different strokes, but a lot of it was just going to Destiny, the game, and saying, this is a cool post, but this is not the kind of thing I want to talk about. And so an early choice was to make it, self-post only, so discussion only, no clip posting. Banning suggestions was absolutely a given because the more I've learned about video game design, the more I realize, it's Dunning-Kruger, right? Like, you learn a little bit and you learn a little bit more, and at the end of it, you just realize how much you don't know. And so, and there's a lot of people out there who are very informed about it, but it just wasn't a route to go down. We didn't want to become just the, is this a good role for my gun? But I mean, I think that was really the core of it, was just, have a high quality discussion, focus on real stuff that you can go out and find out for yourself, and not, what might be coming in the next release of the game or what you'd like to see. And then the rest of it just sort of grew up over time. I mean, we eventually had to ban posts about monitors and controllers, not because they're not relevant or interesting, but just because we were having the same conversation every day.
Yeah.
Stuff like don't be a jerk. Well, that's just obvious. But yeah, it was really about finding that sort of identity of player who wants to think or wants to learn from people who think, and figuring out how we could make it quiet enough for those voices to have a thoughtful conversation. Yeah, I mean, it seemed to find an audience. I don't think we built an audience at all. I think there was a lot of people who were sort of hungry for that, and we just opened the door and they came in and turned it into a cool place to hang out.
Yeah, I have tremendous respect for the lack of salt on that sub. I mean, some of the other places, especially in those weird windows after an update where like all the newness is worn off and everybody's kind of getting bored, there's a lot of salt that gets thrown around, and not in Crucible Playbook. I'll sometimes get tired of Destiny the game, be like, I'm tired of the complaints, I'm tired of the suggestions. I just want to go somewhere and talk about the game, and Crucible Playbook has been that through and through the entire time. But I guess a question, maybe a more serious one, you guys have gotten a little bit of blowback for that, rationale that you take, haven't you?
Absolutely. I guess for me, I'm probably a little bit older than the average Destiny player, or at least the average Destiny player who posts on the internet. And I'm not that old, and Destiny does skew older. I mean, we've got a very diverse audience for a first-person shooter. But that's just really to say that I kind of know what role video games play in my life at this point. Like, I play video games to have fun, to talk to my friends, to blow off steam, to feel like powerful when I've been having a bad day and I'm just like out of control. And the thing is that if it's not fun for me, if it's not scratching that itch, I'm never going to complain about it. I'm just not going to play it. I'll just do something else with my time. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a diehard every weekend Trials player to have a legitimate viewpoint in this world. The other thing, and this was more of an experiment than anything else, because look, Destiny is not a perfect game. I mean, it's come a long way, but now it's sort of going the other way. It's starting to show its age. Like, you play other games. Thank God Destiny 2 is coming out. I'll put it that way. But the sort of experiment was to say, look, it's a given. There's stuff about this game that could be better, or there's stuff about this game that's just bad. And it's an interesting conversation to think about why that might be or how you could fix it. But let's assume that whatever it is, and that if we take that out of the picture, let's just focus on operator error. Like, if I died, maybe it was because of lag, but still, was there something I could have done to not die, even if I know there's going to be lag? If that's a given, how do I focus on myself from there? And we certainly have been called every name in the book, various versions of Bungie shills. That we are not on the payroll. I wish we were. I could use it. But I think the thing I've found is that once you kind of open up the door to say, well, I died, it wasn't me, it was X. That, fill in matchmaking, fill in lag, fill in hackers, fill in LO, whatever you want to call it. You might be right, but that's just not as interesting a conversation because you have no agency in that. I would much rather think, I'm going to rule out any possibility there was something external that caused me to lose and instead say, what can I do differently? Because that's really what the game is for me. Can I get better? Even when the odds are against me, even when there's a system that doesn't work in my favor. And some people don't identify with that, and that's fine. I mean, it's certainly not for everybody. But it's more fun that way. At least I think so. And I think a lot of people are relieved to hear, if you want to just play the meta, what is it right now? You want to use sidearms and stickies? Do it. Play to win. If that's how you get to the top and you like to win, then win. It changes every couple months, so have fun with this one. And conversely, if you don't want to play the meta, you want to use whatever gun you feel like and go off or not in spite of it, then fine, do that too. The only thing that I'm not interested in is you shouldn't use this because XYZ, because unless you're hacking, unless you're exploiting something in the game, it's all there. It's all fun. Use it all. Play every subclass. Play every weapon, and never. I don't know. Don't hesitate to say what could I have done better, because even the best players in the world make mistakes. So.
Yeah, and you guys have that very famous catchphrase, "Use whatever, don't apologize." That I believe has now been spread around the Destiny community, and I think a lot of people are finally starting to grasp that. And you're absolutely right. If you want to use the meta, use the meta. It's what's powerful, and it's there for a reason. Play to your fullest potential. And if you don't, then don't. But at the same time, you got to hold yourself back from complaining about what is the meta. I'm an anti-meta hipster. That's what I do.
Yep.
I can't stand the meta for me, myself, to be playing it. But then again, I also have to rein myself in when I want to complain about getting stuck in the face or something like that. Because, and this, Kutch, if you don't have any more specific questions, I think this will be a perfect segue into what the main focus of conversation is for this podcast.
Well, I had one question, but that question is really, I think, more about maybe the main thrust of the podcast, because it's kind of a question about what to do in the Crucible, and I think maybe we can answer it by saying what not to do in that situation. So
We'll save that. We'll save that for the relevant part because we do have a nice little list of things not to do in the Crucible. We're going to clickbait you here a little bit. So, like I said, we had things to do before a game. Things like you find a meta weapon that you're comfortable with, find a good control scheme, find good sensitivity, find a party to play with, people you can communicate with. Those are things before a game. Things during a game, making sure to focus on your special ammo. Shoot, I had an entire list of them. I think there was like 10 of them I just wanted to go over. Use your radar, pay attention to where your teammates are, learn when to run away is one of those things. We're going to hit on that in a little bit, talking about disengaging. Pick a strategy and stick with it. Use your super, learn the maps, right? Those are things you should do. But at the same time, there's an entire different subset of things. And Birds actually touched on one a little bit earlier, things you should not do. And I really like where you were going with that, because the first thing you should not do is blame external factors for why you died. As soon as you start blaming other stuff, I died because of lag, I died because of the meta, I died because of it doesn't matter what it is. As soon as you start blaming other things for why you died, you take the onus off of yourself to improve, and you put the onus on other things to get better. And that's not what we want to do. If you died, even if it may have been because of a little bit of lag or because a guy was using a fusion grenade, ask yourself why you were in that situation where you died. And it's not going to work every time. I mean, every once in a while, you may get shot through a wall and there's nothing that can be done about it. But you got to let those slide. You got to let those go by the wayside, all right? Do not dwell on things you can't change, and do not blame external factors for your own death. Look at yourself and think, why? Why did this happen to me? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is that, like, even if you err on, you take that approach and you're wrong, like you really did die because of things entirely outside of your control. The mindset that you have when you say, I'm not going to blame anyone else, I'm going to watch my gameplay back and figure it out. That kind of mindset stays cooler under pressure, doesn't go on tilt, makes for a great teammate who's reliable. I mean, you can be hype, you can be bouncing off the walls, or you can be just a total cool customer just staring down the sniper scope. But when you don't let the sort of momentary rise and fall get to you too much, and can kind of keep your focus, and if you do get shot, say, well, one, I'm not going to do that again, and two, that's your game. Okay, I can counter that. I can play against that. At least in my experience, you just find a lot more success. It's, we have a sports psychologist who comes on every now and then, and he calls it the growth mindset, where you treat everything as an opportunity to learn. And if you got a growth mindset, I'm happy to play with you. Any game type. It's just more fun that way.
And you're not going to tilt your teammates either. If you're constantly complaining about everything, I can't believe that lag, I can't believe this kid's using that gun, people don't want to play with you, man. I actually, a while back, had a friend who I used to play Destiny with, and I was raging at something or other. I was in a bad mood. It was something had happened during the day, and I wasn't in a good mood. I came on Destiny to relax, and I wasn't having a great time, and I was complaining. And, he actually said to me, he's like, dude, you got to stop complaining. He's like, I'm not having fun playing with you.
Yeah.
And that shut me up immediately. And ever since then, I do not complain when I'm playing with my friends, because I don't want to ruin someone else's entertainment. And on top of that, it affects my own mindset. When I know I'm not going to complain, I play better. I enjoy myself more. It's just, you can't let those negative things get into your mind, because not only it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to play worse, and you're going to think worse, you're going to feel worse, and then you're going to play worse, and it's just a vicious cycle, and it keeps going and going and going.
I mean, if you're playing a trials, a round of trials, you can lose 4. You can lose 4 times in a row and still win it. And to be able to kind of go into every game fresh, it doesn't matter if you lost the last one, or the last 2, or the last 4 of them, you still have an opportunity to win. I think a lot of people can be, and myself included, but a little self-defeating in that, you get a bad beat, or you just, don't play up to your standard, and you end up getting cracked for it. That's fine, right? You can still win the ticket. You don't have to use that mercy. But it's a rare thing, I think. It's hard to do, and it's something to strive for. And after a certain point, that kind of stuff becomes almost more important than just the raw mechanics of the gun skill, because you get that over time, and you sort of top out where you do. But that mindset's the Holy Grail, right? Like, you can play well and keep cool, and people want you on their team. You're a +1.
Yep. And conversely, when you don't, people don't want to play with you. There used to be a really good StarCraft player, StarCraft 2, by the name of Idra, I believe it was. And dude had the worst personality ever. He was a tremendously talented player, but people didn't enjoy playing with him. And he actually brought himself down by being just negative. And I remember one time he was in the middle of a game and he just quit out of the game. And he had a habit of doing this. He would just rage quit out of the middle of a game in a tournament because he was just pissed off about something or other, and he just quit out of the middle of the game. Like games he had a chance of winning. Mm-hmm. And you know, it was that mindset that was defeating him. It wasn't his opponent, he was beating himself. You don't want to beat yourself. If someone else is going to beat you, make them beat you, play your best. Don't beat yourself.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that other game. We certainly got chewed out on it on our show. But let's just say there's another game made by the same company who actually makes StarCraft 2 that is a shooter. And I've tried a strategy there. I got a suggestion from a YouTube video from a YouTuber I like. And I played just a regular round, except every time someone on my team got a kill, I just watched the kill feed. I would just say, oh, nice pick. Nice pick, your name. Nice pick, your name. Even if I didn't see it, even if it wasn't that nice a pick, whatever it was. And through that sole act of just kind of being a voice to like make people feel good, pump your teammates up, focus on the good stuff, not sweat the bad stuff. I mean, we went on a 5-game winning streak with a bunch of strangers. It's a magical thing to be able to inspire people. And it doesn't mean like, you know, sucking up or anything, just a couple nice words. And even if you don't feel it inside, kind of striving for it on the outside. So your team feels okay and they can worry about their own stuff. It's hard, but it makes a big difference.
That's a good idea, actually. I'm gonna have to try that sometime in the Crucible. If anyone ever joins Game Chat with me.
Yeah, Destiny's a little different. Maybe D2 will have more populated comps.
One thing I want to throw in, and I feel like we should move on to maybe the next thing not to do. That's also a thing not to do in Destiny in general. That doesn't just apply to PvE. There's a moderately famous Twitch streamer who's trying Destiny for the first time recently, and he's I haven't been watching. I watched a little bit, and it was just there was somebody else in the stream who was being kind of negative, and it just wasn't my thing. I don't like watching people trash things that I like. It doesn't get me going. So he's been trying out Destiny for the first time, but he's playing with this very negative person. And a good friend of mine has been watching this stream just because he was kind of curious to see the game through the eyes of somebody who's never played it. 3 years in now, it's kind of it's kind of old hat to a lot of us. We're just used to things, and we forget how amazing it was to see it for the first time. But he said that's been a real struggle for him as well, just watching that constant negativity in PvE. Watching people play raids and just complain. When people get too negative in a raid, for me, I go to bed. Like, I'm just not interested in continuing. Because if you make a mistake, like, that's cool. Like, just say, okay, hey, no big deal. What got you that time? All right, how can I help? What can I do to back you up? Should we change up positions? Should we stop and all get a drink and tell jokes for a couple minutes? What do we need to do to make this fun again so that we can have some success? And that applies to PvE, to PvP. If you're playing with friends and somebody's getting salty, like, it's time to take a break, and you can be the person. It's okay to speak up and be the person who speaks up and says, this is kind of getting out of hand. Let's all take a break here and walk away for a few minutes. And that's fine. Like, we all have to do that sometimes. Sometimes I have bad days and just for whatever reason it's frustrating me. And so, I go play some nonsense game from PSN. I go do something where I can swear at the game and it's not affecting somebody else's day, like you said, Merc. Like, you don't want to be bringing other people down, but also don't be afraid to be the person who's bringing other people up, or who's reminding people it's okay to step back for 5 minutes and catch your breath.
That can be really scary when there's like sort of that charged silence in the comms and everyone's kind of on edge. To be the person who kind of breaks the tension, it can be terrifying to do that. But I've never been in a situation where a person tried it and it didn't make everyone feel better. Everyone's sort of waiting for everyone else to say, are we okay? Can we get back? Can this be fun again? So yeah, it's terrifying, but when you do it, it's you're helping everyone with it.
I've definitely been in situations where I failed to do it,
but you wish you had.
But yeah, when you do it, it is rewarding. And then looking back, there have been times when I'm like, I could have just spoken up. Like all I had to do was open my mouth. That's and it would have been cool. We would have been cool. So
I was say not to beat a dead horse. Something you don't want to do is beat a dead horse, obviously. But I mean, this is a tip. We're dropping some knowledge bombs here. This is a tip you can use in real life too. This just doesn't just pertain to video games. You do this at work. You do this at school. Do this with your friends, family. I mean, it's a universal theory. You can use it anywhere else, but. We do need to move on. We spent about 15 minutes preaching at people not to be unhappy and sad
don't
and
be
angry.
Salty.
So, yeah, don't be salty. So I say what we do is we've each got our own little couple of lists. I say we just go in a little circle. Kutch, we'll start with you. We'll go to you, then Birds, then back to me, and we'll just say something that we think you shouldn't do in the middle of a game. We'll discuss it for a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next one. We'll get a little roundtable thing going on here.
Let's do it here. So I've got one. This is a constant reminder to myself. Every time I go into the Crucible, I have to remind myself not to do this at least once a night. Don't die running down the same path 2 times in a row.
Oh, yeah.
If you die running down a path one time, if you get sniped, you get picked, pick a different path. There are at least 3 paths on any map. On the smallest possible map, there's at least 3 different ways that you can go across the map one direction to another. Usually you can combine those and get all manner of different paths that you can follow. There's cover, there's doorways and openings and places you can jump to get different angles. Do not die the same way twice in a row. That's my number one. Don't do it. Don't do it, guys.
It's hard. It's hard to avoid that temptation, man, because you get killed by a guy hard scope in a hallway, and all you want is to go back and run and teach that guy a lesson, and then he kills you again. And you can't let him kill you twice, so you have to go back and kill him. And then he kills you again, and that's how you get a back in action medal after like 5 deaths of running to the same spot. You got to change it up. You got to avoid the temptation. Yeah. Learn from your mistakes is, I think, the moral of that one.
Yeah. For me, and I would probably say this for all of these, that, I mean, I certainly do these things, but when I've done 2 or 3 of them in a single match, it's usually an indication that I'm not playing mindfully. I'm just kind of on autopilot. And so I would say for all of these, if you notice yourself doing them, it's not bad, but just reset. Take that moment to reset and say, what should I be doing right now? Because that's what I try and do.
Yeah.
So don't play on autopilot, because if you're not paying attention, if you're not focusing, I mean, you're not going to play your best. That's not the way it works.
Yeah, you're certainly not improving. You have to pay attention to get better. All right, am I up?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a big rule, and of course there's always exceptions, but in general, don't push without your health, a team, and a grenade. This is not for that trials moment where, it's 2v1 and you're at half health, but you got to get this guy before he gets the res. That's a little bit different. But this is when you have a choice to say, I see him right there. I could go there and I could get them, and then I'll get the guy next to him. I'm going to get all of them. I'm going to destroy them. Or I could wait a couple seconds and just regroup. And a lot of it comes from awareness of saying, I'm going to keep an eye on my health bar, and if I've got no shield and I'm at half health, then I'm going to crouch, I'm going to reload, I'm going to get my health back. I've got 3 seconds left on this grenade, and that's the sort of perfect opener to challenge these guys. I'm just going to wait for the grenade. I'll suppress a little bit until then. They're not going anywhere. And then the other part is, if you're playing, especially if you're playing pubs, you've got some blueberries on your team, let them go first. Let them run out there. There'll be a human shield. They're probably going to die. It's fine. But that will give you a team to play with and to position with. You don't always need to have all 3, but I always know when I die because I charged in to finish someone off, except there was actually 3 people and I had my shotgun out with 1 shell left and no health and no grenade. Not a good sign.
So you're looking for that holy trifecta then. Health, grenade, teammates, And, two out of those three things we focused on really, really heavily in prior episodes. The letting the blueberries, especially in Rift, we talked about this, letting the blueberries run in first. They serve as a distraction. They serve as a bullet sponge. And if they live, team shots are better than solo shots. 2 shots are better than 1. That's the way it works. You got 2 people focusing down a target. You're going to kill them faster than just one person doing it on their own. You always work with your teammates, even if they are blueberries, even if you're not talking to them. And then grenades, Cougar harped on this a ton. You soften targets with grenades. Not only can it cover an advance, but it can also cover a retreat if you have to.
Yep.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because wasn't in Quasi's question something along the lines of how do you know when to disengage from a gunfight? It's a very similar answer to how do you know when to engage. If you go through your mental checklist and you're not comfortable in that fight anymore, you need to disengage. If you missed your first shot and they hit theirs, if you're outnumbered, meaning they have their teammates, you don't have yours, if they got a grenade up and they just hit you and you don't have anything to retaliate with, it's the same thing. When to disengage, when to engage are very, very similar checklists to go through in your head.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just segue into that real quick and get a little input from you, Birds, as well on this. So Inquasi writes, and I want to read all this because he had some nice comments for you. Hi, Birds. Thank you for getting Crucible Radio out on a Monday afternoon, UK time, in time for my commute home. I'm an average PvP player who has managed to consistently raise my KD from 0.85 to 1.08 now. Not sure how that's happened. Yeah, I was impressed too. That's pretty good. But anyway, how do you decide when to disengage from a gunfight? Do you stop if you are shot first? By the time I decide it's best to stop, it's too late. So,
good question. I suppose the short answer is if it's not going well, is usually when I try and bail. There's 2. I main Night Stalker. I really try and play everything, even if I'm no good at it, and I have a very specific reason for that. But with Night Stalker, especially if you're running Bones, you have 2 very important movement abilities that really make this decision a lot easier. The first is that you have Shade Step, which is like the perfect ultimate panic button. Just like, oh, I'm about to die. Let me just Shade Step laterally and maybe I'll end up behind cover. I mean, that alone saves me so much and is the source of so many deaths when I'm not playing Night Stalker and I'm just teabagging the air and getting shot at.
We've all teabagged after playing Night Stalker.
Yep. No, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just thought I'd do a little dodge roll. The other part of it is that the movement ability on a hunter with Bones, or a Titan who knows how to skate, or a Warlock who's a particularly good surfer, means that you can traverse the map so quickly that generally I give myself 1 shot at an engagement. If I'm trying to, like, what's a good example? Like, let's just say Waterfall on Pantheon, for example. If you're like, that's a sniper lane, so already if you don't have a sniper or at least a scout or a long range pulse, you're in trouble. But even trying to get in position there, maybe I want to look at Cube, or maybe I want to try and get to their spawn. If I start an engagement and it's not going well, I'm always, first it's purely survival instinct. Just, can I get to cover? Can I get my health back? Can I hope a blueberry runs out and distracts them long enough for me to do the second part, which is reposition? And this is the number one biggest change to my game, and the number one thing I see average level players not picking up on until they start watching their gameplay, which is, okay, you have an angle, you have a shot, you have a line on the enemy, you try it, and either they get the first shot off, or you duff a couple, or you're outnumbered and it's not working. If it didn't work that first time, it's cooked, man. Don't bother. Instead, move around, rotate a little bit. So maybe moving up to top heavy on Pantheon, or even booking it all the way around and coming from cube instead. It seems like, oh, I'm running away, oh, they're going to get position. But the reality is that you can move to a new position and even go back and forth between 2 positions so quickly that it's just a dramatic improvement, because the tendency most people have is to keep looking where you were the previous time, to start hard scoping, to start going there. So disengagement's about survival. It's really about what you do after that. And if your plan is get your health back and look again, then you're going to be in trouble.
I think that's a really great answer. I think it does kind of say something there. In Quasi, you were kind of on the right train of thought there. If the other guy shoots first, if Han shoots first, you want to get out of there. You don't want to be Greedo in that situation. It's not going to go well.
Yep.
One of the things that, as I've started to improve, I would call myself improving into an average level of play, is that it's actually a lot of fun to run away. Because because you die less, and dying less is fun. But B, people love to chase. People love chasing you. And did we mention about the grenades? And we're going to talk about some places that you shouldn't go running out into maybe in a little bit here. And one of the things that I guess I'll segue in and jump turns. You shouldn't chase ever. You should not chase somebody. If you lose line of sight on them in a gunfight, and it's not trials and they're absolute, and you're just trying to get that final kill. Like, again, trials is its own thing. I don't even want to address that because that's not, I think, where the majority of PvP players spend most of their time. And I think we've talked about trials separately, so I'll leave that for the trials episode. Look it up if you want to talk about trials. But in general, if you don't get the kill in that gunfight, let it go. Like you said, if they get the first shot, run away. But if you get the first shot and they successfully run away, you'll get the next one. Don't chase, because you're going to get a grenade to the face, and then you are going to get shot, and you are going to die. That's what's going to happen. So
it is. I mean, it's so frustrating when you get someone absolute and then you just duck out of sight, because if you could just get one more shot, they'd die. But there's really nothing you can do, because if they're smart, they're going to wait until they've got all your health back, and it's like it didn't happen. But I think it helps to have a mindset that doesn't see that as a defeat, either disengaging to hide and get your health back, or someone doing the same to you and you not chasing them. Because I think there's, as you start to mature, there's an awareness you gain that is not always obvious in Destiny, which is the front. Like, where is the line? So maybe, let's look at Anomaly, right? Like, there's always that initial 50-50 between room 1 and room 2. There's an imaginary line drawn in the sand that defines the positioning, and that if you stay on your side of the line, you're going to get team shots, you're going to get picks, you're going to have cover to fall back into. If you flank around and don't push but just get a new angle, you've pushed the line a little bit closer towards the enemy. They're falling back, they have fewer options. And as soon as you cross that line, you're in trouble, because now you're headed into the unknown, into their territory, and have put a target on your back. And so I think you can... a lot of people don't realize that it exists, period. But I encourage you to sort of pay attention, and every time you spawn in, look for your teammates' icons and say, where's the line they've established? But what you start to see is that, look, even if you don't kill the guy, even if he goes and hides, you've made progress. You've pushed him back. You've pushed the line a bit in your direction. You've advanced the fight. You've gotten the position you want. And when you start to see those things as a success, instead of just how many kills did I get, how many assists did I get, you kind of get down to the core of it, which is that it's not about getting the most kills. It's about winning games. And that there's a lot of different paths to victory that they don't always represented in that final leaderboard.
Yeah, and don't chase is like one of the cardinal rules of Halo. I'm a Halo player. I came from Halo to Destiny, like straight up. That's just what I migrated in from. And don't chase is something that is repeated ad nauseum among Halo players, especially high level ones, because they will lay a trap for you.
Oh yeah.
And, you see good Destiny players do it. They run around a corner and they're absolute, and they don't keep running. They turn around and throw a grenade straight at the ground where you're going to come around the corner when you start chasing them. You do not chase. It is such a good way to get yourself killed when you thought you were going to get a kill. And I'll say that, that is something that has been, drilled into my head so long that I when someone runs away, it is a little bit, upsetting to see someone, they don't even have a sliver of health left. They're gone. All you need is one more hit, but you got to look at it like, you know what? I pushed him back. That's what I did. I held my side of the line. All right. It could have been worse. He could have killed me. He could have taken my spot on the line, but I didn't. I held him off. That's a victory for me.
So I want to throw a little additional nerddom into this discussion, because I think it's an interesting one that maybe we haven't had in detail in the past. So I'm a chess player, or I used to be a fairly mediocre chess player, to compliment myself in a big way. But one of the things I also did is I actually tutored chess. We would teach grade school kids how to play, which was very educational for me. I got a lot better at chess by watching how kids learn how to play. But chess is very much a game where very casual players, somebody who's used to playing very casual checkers or other games, it's like, oh, well, you just want to take pieces, right? Like, that's your objective, is to just take pieces. And I'll tell you that if you play that way against a good chess player, you will get demolished. All of a sudden, you'll find out every time you take a piece, you lose a bigger piece. Every time you make a move, somehow they had an angle on you that you didn't even know existed. And all of your options have suddenly become bad. That same sort of strategy can apply in Destiny and in many games where you've got an active front. And the way you talked about that really made me think about this. There's a concept in chess. It's a German term called Zeus Wang. You can look it up. It's ZUGZWANG. It's an excellent word to use in casual conversation. I highly recommend it. Zeus Wang is German for compulsion to move. So if you can put the idea is this, okay? So you've put the other person into a situation where what they would rather do is just totally avoid participating, right? They want to hide, they want to run away, but you've put them into a position where they have to come to you because they're now losing the game. And so you do that by controlling territory, and by just getting a very small lead. You don't have to win by a huge margin. In chess, you really only have to put one piece in check. The king is the only piece that actually matters in chess. Destiny doesn't work quite the same way. The analogy doesn't go that far. But you can leverage a very small advantage into a win when you're playing with a team and when you're playing positionally. Like you talked about, controlling that front. When you have two zones in control, and this is, I don't know if there's a meme, but there should be like 1 million memes by now. Do not take the third position, right? Like there are some maps where, you prefer C, great. And so maybe try to swap that early, but you don't need to control all three unless you're just trying to mercy the other team. That's, if it's a tough game, if you're playing against good players, play positionally, play to control the map. In Control, it's outlined for us. It's very easy to see where we need to control. In Rift, it's the same way. You know what zone you need to control. Some other games, it can get a little bit more difficult, and I don't want to go into that in detail today, but I wanted to share that term and that concept of putting your opponent in the position where they have to find a new angle, make them be the one who doesn't want to die going the same way twice.
I feel like Destiny Fun Police has made a Trials career out of getting that capture point and just forcing people to make mistake after mistake because he's got the position and he's got the super.
Yeah.
I think it's as close as I can come.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, if you have B and you have C, or you have B and you have A, they have to go to one of those 2 points or they're going to lose. And you don't have to go anywhere. You can sit there and defend those points. That's why they say don't capture the third. You capture the third, you break the line, is what basically ends up happening. Then they're not spawning in front of you. Now they're spawning to the left of you, to the right of you, behind you, all over the place. Don't break the line. Hold the line. I mean, how many generals have said that over the course of all of history? And I know Destiny is a little bit more important to us than those Roman conquests and things like that, but it's the absolute truth. Hold the line. Take 2 points, and Control is such a wonderful playlist to learn how the maps work, to learn how the rotations on the maps work. I mean, the control points are put where they are for a reason. They're not random, regardless of how we think Bungie did it. They're not random. They're there for a reason. It's because those are significant places on the map, and you really, really need to learn that. So I like with that conversation when I like Zeus Wang? Zeus Wang?
Zeus Wang.
What is that? I don't know what the word is, and I'm not going to use it correctly, but I am going to use it tomorrow, just in the middle of conversation. I'm just going to slip it in there and then move on without saying anything else about it and see who catches it. So I like that.
Yeah. A little always gotta get a little vocabulary lesson in when I can. Actually, the Destiny
we try to teach.
This is edutainment. It's an edutainment podcast. Destiny Fun Please, so that makes me think, and really Control as well makes me think of another don't. I'm like, I feel like I'm cheating, so I'm gonna say one more and then I'm gonna be done with my don'ts. But speaking of bubbles and control points, don't just sit in the bubble or on the control point longer than you need to. You know, go in there and get the buff, sit there and capture it. But if there's an enemy, like if you see red on the radar, you probably want to be in a different place, because they're coming there with a super to wreck your day, and you just need to get out of the way. Let them drop their super. Let them kill the blueberry. You know, if you can't warn them if they aren't in party chat or group chat, and then you can get the kill, and you can move back into position. You can run through the bubble again. You can get back on the control point and finish capping it. Don't sit there and wait to die. That is very frustrating for me to watch teammates just die in bubbles and control points.
Bubbles are super magnets. That's what those things are. If you're not Destiny Fun Police and you're not a master with the suppression grenades, those bubbles. And see, the thing is he's counting on it being a super magnet. That's why he plays the way he does. But for everyone else who's not that good, you're just like, you put a bubble up and every golden gun, striker, nova bomb in the map is like, that's what I'm going to go destroy.
I'm coming for you.
And they all run towards it. Yeah. And if you have a bunch of blueberries sitting around inside that bubble, they're all going to die too.
Well, Mercules, you made the fantastic point, which is that those control points are chosen for a reason. They are spots that are important. They represent sort of significant nexuses on the map. Nexi? I don't know. But with a couple exceptions, but for the most part, they tend to be pretty hard points to defend from. Maybe like you could say A on Rusted Lands, you know, that's pretty secure. But for the most part, they're kind of bad positions. Really, if you are trying to defend a point, you want to position yourself above it, behind it, in front of it, but at an angle. Basically everywhere but on the point, because that's where your enemy is trying to get to. And you don't want to be just in a crazy melee battle with them. You want to be at an advantageous angle behind cover, knowing that they have no choice but to go stand there eventually. And what I've found is that, I mean, you mentioned bubbles, but I've always found it really fascinating, the idea of dropping important points on the map. It could be a bubble that just gets people's attention. It could be a control point. It could be the spark or the rift and spark, or it could be something as just like a pile of crests where a bunch of people all died in a big pile, that create these extreme points of interest. And there's usually some incentive to go there, whether it's to pick up the crest, to grab the spark, but then always a stronger impulse to not go there, or go there as little as possible. And sort of being able to identify not the point where you want to stand, but the point that people are fighting over, and play around that instead of on it is a tricky one. And I learned so much when Supremacy came out, because instead of just learning these lessons 3 times on each control map, you do it on literally every hotspot on the map, and start to see, if this is where I care about, here's where I need to be. And there's so much depth to these maps that you can just keep playing that same game forever and still be finding new spots and bad spots to stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, an easy way to illustrate that is C on Shores of Time. Where do people stand when they defend C? They stand up on the building, or they stand behind the rocks and they defend B as well. They're not standing on C.
No.
Think about B on what is it? Is it Blind Watch? The one that's got the rotating fan that you jump on that everyone hates, Alpha. They all want Charlie and Bravo. Why am I blanking on that?
Oh,
I think it's Blind Watch.
Yeah, that's Blind
Yeah,
Watch.
yep,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. So it's because I never see that map anymore, ever at all. Granted, I play mostly Rift, which explains why I don't see it. But look at B. They don't stand on B to defend it. They stand around B, around all those places. Those control points are, if they were easy to defend from the point itself, whoever got them first would win the game. That would defeat the entire purpose. But they're very, very, heavily contested points on the map in any game mode. Control just makes it easy to show you exactly where to go, so you don't even have to think about it. But people still migrate there in all the other game modes too. So learn your points.
Yeah. One other I wanted to throw in there was heavy. Heavy is a great thing to sit back and watch people run towards so that you can kill them.
Oh yes. Yes, free kills.
I always forget that I need heavy kills. I'm so glad that I don't have to get heavy kills in Iron Banner anymore, because I always forget to get heavy kills because I'm just sitting there, with my PDX just mowing people down while they run toward heavy. And then I'm like, oh, that guy got it. Now I'm really got to kill him. But you can keep the other team, but you don't have to push with a super. You can just sit there and just watch. A lot of the heavy ammo is fairly open. There are some that are pretty well hidden or that are harder to get to, harder to get an angle on. But there's a lot of heavy boxes that are sitting out in the open, and you can just sit there and watch and up your KD for free.
Does that mean is it my time
Finally,
to do a don't so
at least
far?
took 20 minutes
after all this time? Yeah. So I have one that has to do a lot with what I just said about the lane on Shores of Time, and there's lanes on every single map. We talked about Waterfall Lane on Pantheon earlier. Learn where sniper lanes are, especially at this current point in time with the given meta. No Land Beyond is still relatively powerful. And snipers are pretty rewarding because they're not high risk, high reward, or they're not high risk special weapons like shotguns and fusions are. You can lose an engagement if you have a sniper rifle and disengage and survive and keep your ammo. So it's kind of pushing people more towards the sniper passive style of gameplay if they don't want to run the sidearm style of gameplay. Now, trials, not so much, and things like that, and sweaty matches, not so much, but for sixes, for things like that, you're still going to run into a lot of hard scoping snipers. That's the way it works. And at this point in time in the game, you should know where the sniper lanes are. If you stroll out into a lane and you see 2 or 3 scope glints down at the other end, you know what you should not do is poke your head back out into that lane.
It's go there for the rest of the match.
Seriously, it's called peeking lanes. Don't peek sniper lanes. If you somehow, by the grace of God, escaped the first time without getting your head torn off by a sniper, the stupidest possible thing you can do is stick your head back out. Like, oh, I wonder if they're still there. They are. They are, and they're hardscoping. I know because I'm a filthy hardscoper, and that's what I do. And like 90% of my sniper kills are from a kid who makes it around the corner and then sticks his head back out, where I was literally just looking. It's like, oh, he just went around the corner. Let me line up my reticle exactly where his head went around the corner. And then he sticks it back out. And then you get a headshot on him. Like, I cannot stress to you enough, do not peek sniper lanes. If you absolutely have to, if you got a hand cannon, jump. Jump outside of the corner, jump into the top. They're not going to be looking up at the ceiling. They're going to be looking straight at where the head will be. It'll throw them off. If you're not using a hand cannon, slide around the corner. But that's only if you absolutely have to press that lane. I'm telling you, it's just not worth it. If you see snipers hard-scoped, flank. We talked about all these ways where you can move, you can reposition yourself. The movement speeds are so fast. There are a ton of better options than seeing a sniper lane and continually just running straight into it. All right, so that's like a pet peeve of mine, which even though it benefits me as a player when other
like
people
do
it,
here,
I love it. But I mean, it's I watch my friends who aren't that great play, and I watch them make the decision. I'm like, oh, there's a sniper there, and he's like hiding behind the corner, and you can see his like finger like itching to step back out and try to contest that sniper, and he doesn't. He dies immediately. I'm like, bro, what did I say about peeking? Don't peek. All right, don't do it. Don't peek. He's like, I know. Don't peek. Does it anyways. So that's a lesson you absolutely got to learn as a player.
Well, here's my MLG pro tip right here. And I'm thinking of, I mean, we can keep using those Pantheon lanes as an example because they're so straightforward, and also because there's cover all the way up until the moment you peek. Sit down, hit that down arrow, and use the third-person camera. Switch to a sword hilt if you've got your heavy. You can play the camera around. You can't necessarily see every angle, but you can see very quickly, am I alone here and I can use this as a fast route to travel, or is somebody there and I've got to find another path Some people dance. It's nice when it doesn't sort of show up on the feed. But getting into the habit of that anytime you want to even think about it going into a sniper lane, even if you yourself are sniping, it's a tough habit to form, but it just, like you say, it just prevents a huge number of an entirely avoidable deaths. So strongly recommend.
And it doesn't take a ton of map knowledge to start avoiding those sniper lanes. All you have to do is just assume, like, first off, objective modes I think make it easy, because anytime there's an open space greater than you could estimate in game maybe 30 meters in game, assume that somebody is probably trying to snipe that lane, until you've looked, and that's a fantastic tip that I am always telling myself, oh, I should really remember to do that, and then I never do. So thank you for reminding me again, because I really need to get in that habit, because I am a hyper aggressive player. But it does, like I said, it doesn't take a lot of map knowledge. Once you've been on a map once or twice, you should have an idea where the big, wide open spaces are. Those open spaces, I mean, you can just assume at some point somebody is hard scoping that. And until you've, take advantage of that. That's a fantastic tip. Peek around that corner using your emote or your sword, and know you're alone. Otherwise, stick to cover. There's always another path. You never have to cross an open sniper lane. 90% of the time, it's avoidable. I play hand cannons and shotguns, now hand cannons and sidearms. So I love being right up in somebody's face. I never snipe unless I'm just super bored and don't really feel like, I don't know, having success, because I'm bad at it. But it's avoidable. There's always another path.
I mean, and if you're not familiar with where the sniper lanes are, I recommend dying a bunch of times, because some of them are not obvious. Like, I think
there are a few sneaky ones.
Like, one that got me for the longest time was on Exodus Blue. If you're inside and you look down the tube, there's the guy standing on the boxes there who's just waiting for you. That one is not the most obvious in the world, but if you've died from someone sniping there more than once or twice, you got no excuse. And part of that just means paying attention when you die, not treating death as like, oh, okay, mash square, get back in, get back in, get back in. You have a learning experience every time you die to say, how did I die? What happened? I'm kind of sad that, unlike a lot of games, Destiny doesn't have the kill cam replay from their point of view, because it's such a perfect, you have to imagine it, but it's such a perfect lesson on what did I look like when I was doing something that got me killed. So not only will I stop doing that, but I'll start looking for that when other people do it to me and say, I could kill you right now.
Fortunately,
great.
It does have the red outline though, so at least you can see where they are.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can see a spot where you should be looking the next time you round that corner, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, are we gonna circle back around to you, Kutch, or did you? Since you technically took my spot the last time.
Yeah, I took way too many turns. So I've lost track of whose turn it is, but it's not my turn. I know that for sure.
Well, let's just bounce back to birds then, since I just went.
Sure. Well, I got one. And actually, this is just sort of a more general version of yours. Don't forget the optimal engagement distance for your loadout. And so, suffice it to say, in this example, if you don't have a sniper and you're not using a long-range primary, there are parts of the map that you should never go to from start to finish in the game, those sniper lanes. If you ever find yourself sprinting up that sniper lane on rusted lands, and you're not waiting for someone else to peek, you're going to be in trouble. But this really applies to every single loadout. If you're if you're using maybe a longer range pulse and a sniper rifle, there are a lot of places on some maps. Let me see, like let's say the caves and basement in Anomaly. Once you go to get like that special that's sort of going to the bottom ring in Anomaly, that is not for you. You have some very hard shots to make and still a pretty slow time to kill if you go into that area. If you manage to get through there alive with an enemy in there, you got lucky, because if they're using a shotgun, if they're using a fast charging fusion, an auto rifle, a hand cannon, they should really have you dead to rights there. If you're playing against someone who, you're playing in the shotgun neck of the woods and you don't have a shotgun, if you're the one pushing corners instead of baiting corners when you're holding a fusion rifle, you're doing yourself a disservice. And what it really requires is saying that, assuming I'm not going to use the exact same loadout every time I play, there's no universal strategy for each map, for each game mode. Yeah, there's some stuff that remains constant, but depending on your loadout, you have a very different job to do. If you're on Pantheon and you're holding a sidearm, you're not going to be contributing to your team in the same way someone working a sniper lane does. And that means, and this is tough for a lot of people, including myself, to swallow, that means you probably should not go into that top sniper lane the entire game. You should go the entire match without challenging it, unless you absolutely have to. Because if you're in a situation where you've got the positional advantage for your weapon, if you're getting charged by a shotgunner and you're backpedaling with your fusion rifle, you should win that engagement every single time. And that means not only getting into a good position by going forward, it also means going backwards. And so but it's not the perfect metaphor, but I like to think of kind of like a bungee cord, or maybe like a pole or something that says, I'm using plan C. I've got an optimal engagement distance of, I don't know, like 10 to 15 meters. If they ever get too far away from me for me to land that tight grouping, I need to push forward. But the hard part, if they're closing in on me, I need to be stepping backwards. I need to be walking backwards and maintaining that distance. And this applies to every single loadout. There is no universal loadout, except for not even hand cannons anymore with that beautiful range distance drop off. And this affects everything. Going back to the question of disengaging, if you get into an engagement and you realize, wow, we're at long range and they've got snipers and scouts and I've got a hand cannon and a shotgun, I'm never going to try this again. I'm going to disengage and get back to a situation where I can kind of call the shots. And it's tough. We review a lot of gameplay footage, and this is the number one thing I see over and over, which is you're playing a loadout, but you don't really seem to be playing that loadout. You're just kind of using it while you play your regular game, and it's a tough one. It requires a lot of attention.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, in a podcast a while back, but we were talking about how the meta itself forms. And the meta forms when good players find the guns that have the best combination of ease of use and time to kill. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they find the window in which those guns have that best combination of ease of use and time to kill. And that's the way they play the weapons. They don't pick the weapons that fit their playstyle. They shift their playstyle to the best weapons. And that's how you get blink shotgun metas. That's how you get sidearm no land beyond metas. And you can see that the best players take the best guns and then adapt their playstyle to them.
Yes.
All right. The gun is only useful in certain ranges, exactly like you said. And if you're using the best gun in the game outside of its optimal range, it's not going to be the best gun in the game anymore. You're wasting the potential of that weapon. So exactly like you said, don't forget where your gun is at its, optimal. We call it optimal engagement distance is what we call it here. So don't forget your weapon's optimal engagement distance, because if you're outside of it or you're inside of it, meaning you're too short or too long, you're wasting the potential of that weapon, and you're trying to shoehorn that gun into a strategy which it's not made for. So that's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
I think another part of it is choosing a primary and a secondary that synergize with each other. And it's not always necessary. If you want to run a sidearm and an auto rifle, you are welcome to. If you want to run a scout and a sniper rifle, you're welcome to. And you can certainly be extremely effective if you play to their strengths. But that can be really limiting. To instead say, I'm going to use a scout and a sidearm, or no land beyond and a sidearm. So I've got my long range covered, I've got my mid range covered. Or vice versa, I'm going to use, a hand cannon and a sniper. It just gives you so many more options, because sometimes you find yourself in a less than ideal position. And this doesn't mean that you should play a weapon type you're not comfortable with to cover a theoretical range you might engage at. But it's always a consideration. I try and mix it up and use a different primary each time if I'm just goofing around. At least go through a couple each day, and it's always an interesting exercise to say, all right, well, I'm using Jade Rabbit today, an extremely effective long range weapon, and we're loading into Asylum. Jade Rabbit's not going to be doing me favors for a lot of the engagements I get into. I have to use a sidearm. I have to use a shotgun and play for special. So much of what decides the outcome of a given engagement, past just mechanical skills, assuming most people can aim and land some shots, has so much to do with the situation you've gotten yourself into, and not necessarily how you conduct yourself once you're in it.
Yeah, well said. So I think we covered that one. Did you have something to add to it, Kutch?
The only thing I was going to add is that's really kind of a basic principle of strategy that applies to, we made some kind of joking references to generals and warfare. Like, retreat does not mean loss, in a battle. Retreat can be a feint. It can be, cutting your losses and avoiding, giving the opponent a greater advantage than they've already taken for themselves. But it can also be a tactical decision. It can be, okay, I don't need to hold this. We're going to do this instead. And it applies it to carry the chess analogy forward. One of the things that's hardest for a new chess player to learn, I've watched a lot of kids struggle with this. You can move half the pieces backward, right? You can always back up, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is just back up. And it applies to Destiny. Sometimes, it's really hard to not just go toward the enemy, right? You want to get the kill, you want to move toward them, but sometimes the best thing you can do is move sideways or move backwards and find a better angle, find a better position that fits your weapons, that suits you, or that gives you the time you need to recover and be prepared to actually win that engagement. So don't forget that you can move, in 360 degrees in Destiny at any time. You are never forced to move toward the enemy. And that's a tough principle. It's something I struggle with remembering, because I just love to just run straight in with. I miss my shotgun accuracy in midair. I love to just warrior people. That was so much fun, just to be a total ape. And you find other ways to do that kind of thing, and then whatever, it is what it is. And I've learned some other fun things about sidearms. So, but don't forget that you've got all kinds of directions in Destiny. We have massive jumps in Destiny that you didn't play in Halo back in the day. You couldn't jump like 40 feet into the air in Halo. You didn't have the same, and you couldn't change direction in the same way. There's so much mobility in Destiny. You have so many ways to use it. Don't forget about all those other directions aside from toward the enemy.
Now that being said, though, let's also talk about the fact that in-air accuracy in Destiny is not what it was in Halo. In Halo, one of the first things I would do, in Halo, you had the strafe, the crouch, and the jump. And those were your evading, procedures. In Destiny, if you're using a hand cannon or a sidearm, yeah, go for it. You've got great in-air accuracy. But far too often, I see newer players, younger players who've watched very, very good gamers who are using a palindrome, who are using an Eyes Luna, and they think they can do the same thing with a Monte Carlo or with a Mida. You cannot. You really need to be careful about going airborne in the middle of an engagement, because it is going to kick your accuracy in the nuts. You are going to really, really be struggling to land those shots with any consistency if you're not using one of the guns that actually benefits from the in-air accuracy boost, like hand cannons and sidearms. Now, you can build play styles around it. You can use Icarus. You can do things like that. But I remember watching one of my friends who was a big Halo player, very good Halo player, come into Destiny for the first time. And every engagement, he would jump. Every single engagement, he would jump. And he would lose all these engagements because at the time he was using the Monte Carlo. And he would lose his in-air accuracy as soon as he started to jump. And it was like, dude, you have to stop doing that. Use your evade, use your strafe, just turn around and run. Don't jump in the middle of an engagement unless you're using one of those weapons that you can do that with. You really got to be careful with that, because that's a huge thing that people get confused on. They think they can do it with every gun, and your inner accuracy is not good at all. Snipers especially are terrible.
I mean, that's part of the importance of why getting that first shot is something people talk about, because when you are going for the kill, you are probably at your most vulnerable. You're ADSing, at least with primaries, you're ADSing, you're strafing, but you're moving a little bit slower, unless you're running Puppeteer and frenetically crouching all the time. You are at your most vulnerable. You've moved out of cover. And so you have to do it in order to get the kill, but you need every advantage you can get, which is why the right distance is important, why getting the first shot's important, why having good aim and hitting headshots and really working on doing that is important, because the moment, you need every last one of those advantages just to win and not die. And the moment it's over, the moment you give up, you can Shade Step or Twilight Garrison or jump away, use all your tricks. But there is this certain sanctity of trying to finish someone off that, you really have to press your advantage, or say, this flat out isn't working, I'm going to jump over the top of this thing, get a little bit of health back, and, try and get my last 2 shots from this side. But even then, you're back in that same situation.
And unlike COD, getting the first shot isn't even always a guaranteed kill in this game.
Oh, yeah.
COD's got a really fast time to kill. You get the first shot, you're basically guaranteed to win. Destiny, you can't take that for granted. You get the first shot, someone can still turn on you and finish you off, especially if they're very, very mobile, if they're a very good player. So don't take it for granted that the first shot means you're going to get a kill, because it does not always. It's vitally important, but it is not a guarantee. All right, so the next one that I want to talk about, and I think Birds is actually going to have a little bit of disagreement with me on this one, but it's something that I found works well for me. But
Drama.
I don't change weapons constantly. I don't swap subclasses constantly. I don't change up the perks and stuff like that. I pick a gun, I pick a subclass, and I stick with it for a good amount of time until I'm really, really super comfortable. And then when I want to learn a new strategy, I move to something else. I feel like the muscle memory bonus you get from sticking with one thing is pretty helpful. So for me, my recommendation is don't switch guns and subclasses that often. But Birds, if I'm not mistaken, you feel a little bit differently about that.
Well, okay, so let me start this off by saying, yes, I fundamentally identify and agree with what you're saying. I am a creature of habit. I like eating the same thing for breakfast every morning. I find, it is my default tendency to find one loadout, one approach to this game that I like and stick with it. So what I'm saying here is me forcing myself to go beyond my comfort zone. Practically speaking, I think you're right. I think everyone should have a main. They should have their go-to. They're locked in. They've got the muscle memory. For something like sniping, this is required because it's such a fine motor skill, and you have to keep it in shape. You can't, shotgunning too has its own motor skill, but it's just, there's nothing like having your sniper game be on point, and that requires consistency and regular practice. However, I've identified this tendency in myself, and I've realized that it has done 2 big things. It's limited my enjoyment of the game because I'm only playing 1/9 of the game instead of what's out there. And the other is that it makes me very, very susceptible to other gameplay styles that I'm not personally familiar with. So a while back on the show, I conducted an experiment, and I'm one of those guys. I built this spreadsheet randomizer that took all of the different types of weapons, all of the different subclasses, all of the different exotics, and it would roll me a loadout for the day. So I go, okay, today I'm playing Sunbreaker with a long-range scout and a shotgun and a sword, and I'm wearing this exotic. Okay, how do we make it work? And the important thing with my spread, it had a random seed, but it forced me to iterate through every single option. So I wasn't going to play shotguns 5 days in a row. And I would do a full day of this. So I'd pick my new loadout. I would be utter hot, failing garbage for the first 3 to 5 matches of the day. But I wouldn't stop until at least my KD went positive, at least until I said, I understand I understand what your job is when you're playing this style. This is what I should be doing. This is not what I should be doing. This is how I contribute to the team. And I did find that when I came back to my main of Hand Cannon Night Stalker that I had gotten a little bit rusty. If I was going to play a Trials match, I probably would have suffered for not having that very particular edge down. But I had gained so much because I knew how hard it is to snipe. How as easy as people say it is, how difficult it is to execute a shotgun push from a distance without getting picked off along the way. How to shut down a Stormcaller, because I played Stormcaller and I got shut down over and over and over and went, this is a little bit harder than it seems when you're the one doing it. And so for this reason, I really strongly encourage rotating it and using your comfort in a given rut as an indication you should get out of it. That being said, I think I agree with you. If you're, as long as you still have something you're working on, as long as you're not on autopilot, there's no amount of time you can spend in one setup and still have more to learn there. I would just encourage people to at least check off the list everything this game has to offer, because if you ever wanted to know how to kill a Sunbreaker, just die as a Sunbreaker 5 times in a row and you'll have a much better idea.
So maybe as a summary, say, don't change weapons and subclasses willy-nilly in between every single game.
Good.
But also don't limit yourself to just one group of things, So don't limit yourself, but don't change just because. Get comfortable with something, and then to learn new strategies, to find new weaknesses and new strengths. Go ahead and change things up every once in a while.
Absolutely. And when you make a good point, which is that part of the deal I made with myself is that however uncomfortable the loadout was, I wasn't going to switch away from it. I wasn't going to go back to my comfort zone. I was going to stick with it within this one-day bubble until it started to feel right, until it started to make sense. So I think we agree. I think we're on the same page, but try it all first. Try it before you buy it.
I got my popcorn. I was all set for some drama, some fighting, some bad words, and I got nothing.
I'm sorry. Well, you've got a stupid face. How about that?
Ouch. You're a jerk. You're a jerk, Birds.
Yeah. Okay, we're reasonable people. What can we do?
Yeah, that's the thing. Great minds think alike. They may disagree on some of the finer points of it, but for the most part, and people have even said that. I forget who it was. Someone had a complaint about our podcast that we didn't argue with each other enough or something like that.
we have been actually criticized multiple times for agreeing with each other basically all the time. And the problem is when the facts are X and we all know that X is true, it's really hard to be like, well, just to add a little drama, I'm going to say Y. Suck it.
You need
deal with
a reality TV producer in a confessional booth you can use.
So they can cut it all up and take it out of context and make it seem like we all hate each other.
There you go. Maybe we'll do that
they
for
would
our
cut that
episode.
Yeah, they would cut that right there, and instead of saying make it seem like, they would just put the "we all hate each other" thing in.
There you go.
And then it'd be all over Destiny subreddit, drama, Birds, Kutch, and Mercules all hate each other.
Put that in the commercial. Find out more at 11.
Yes. This is now, I think, the Twitter feed. Find out why we all hate each other.
Yeah, clickbait. Got to use that clickbait, man. How else are we going to get listens, right? It's not the quality content. It's tricking people to listen.
Yeah, that's so true.
Taking notes from BuzzFeed.
Use whatever. Don't apologize.
All right. Well, I've given a couple. So, Birds, what's another don't that you think is a good one to share?
All right. Well, I'll keep this quick because it could be a big one. My number one canary in the coal mine for when I'm playing poorly is that I forgot about cover, forgot about head glitches. I forgot. Keen Koala coined this phrase. I don't know if he coined it, but I learned it from him. It is the single best thing for my game. It's called push into cover. There is never a scenario where you need to push out into the wide open. Maybe if you're closing, doing a drive-by with your shotgun, but for the most part, when you say, I'm going to leave cover and I'm going to go somewhere, make sure the place you're going to has some new cover. It's just a little bit closer to the action or a little bit closer to where you want to be. I find when I'm playing with a fire team, especially during banner, it's the worst. I'm totally focused on the chat or the comms. I'm focused on running around. I'm not thinking, I'm going to get shot from 6 different angles right now. Let's see if I can reduce that to 2. So that I say don't do it, as with all these things, because I do it and I realize I'm playing poorly. Don't forget cover exists, and be Like, and anytime you've seen like a silly burglary montage in a movie where people are unnecessarily like doing somersaults and crouching behind a refrigerator and peeking out and sliding under, like play it like that. Play it paranoid, like everyone's out to get you, and it will recalibrate your cover game and get you focused on not getting shot at least.
Yeah, so don't forget about cover is a good point. You talked about getting shot from a whole bunch of different angles. The way I try to use it is I actually use the outsides of the level to my advantage. They basically cover an entire side of you, either two sides, depending on where you are. Use the outsides of the level to your advantage. If you're, on one of the outside parts, you don't have to cover your left. You don't have to cover your back. All you have to do is think about your front and your right, and the types of cover you can use are a lot more forgiving, basically. So don't forget about cover is a really, really great one. I'm glad you brought that up too.
There's an exercise for this that most people won't do because it seems a bit silly, but I encourage you to trust me on this and just try it for 5 minutes. Go to a custom match or a private match, choose Rumble, set the timer for as long as it takes, and load up, I like Burning Shrine, and just spend 5 minutes by yourself exploring different positions without the pressure of people trying to shoot you. I combined it with working on my angles for my sticks and my smokes because I love playing geometry with a spike grenade. But try it. Try and run up the stairs towards C and realize how wide out in the open are, and you realize, okay, I could go to the right side and hide up against that corner and then go there and then see where you're exposed from and consider all the spots you were vulnerable along the way. It sounds boring, but it was so much fun. Like, this sounds crazy. It was so much fun to be able to see what is the perfect route from point A to point B without getting shot. What is the moment that I do the slide, and to just take the pressure off to work on it. A lot of people aren't interested in that kind of, they just want to play the game, and that's fine. But if you want to get warmed up, you want to try something different, give yourself 5 minutes and just find a spot and turn 360 degrees and consider your options. It opened my eyes in a big way right in the middle of my Destiny career.
I think that's an amazing tip. I can't, as somebody who, gun skill wise and just in general, I consider myself very mediocre in PvP. One of the we talk about, I think, in a number of episodes, don't die is pretty much the first thing you need to learn if you want to get good at PvP. Realizing that there are a lot of different angles that you can die from is so important. And honestly, if you think it's a little weird to kind of go explore the map just to get good, one of the other reasons that you can take to really take some time with the maps is these maps are gorgeous. Like, there is so much that you have never seen in the heat of the battle in a map. If you spend a little bit of time, you're gonna be like, what the heck is that? Like, I did not even know that existed. I can't think of a great example off the top of my head right now. But, if nothing else, take it as a chance to go and get your ghost hunting done. And then just walk around a little bit. You're already there. Enjoy it. There's so much that those maps have to offer. Whether you want to really put some time into working on those angles, figuring out the geometry and the timing, which is immensely valuable. And one of these days, when I'm not a filthy casual, is something that it's on my list of things to do in Destiny, is to spend more time in private matches exploring, and it just hasn't been a priority yet. But Destiny 1 is winding down. I'm finding more time to kind of do these things and think about these things. So
that was my favorite reason that we got the custom games, is because I went into them to do the ghost hunting, and then I just hung out and looked at stuff, because you're right, you never get a chance to explore when you're in the heat of battle. And as soon as we got custom games, I could actually look at everything, enjoy Bannerfall and enjoy First Light and all these beautiful maps. Drifter in particular, I find is absolutely amazing. Drifter's fantastic. Really, really has just a cool aesthetic maps too. And speaking about aesthetic, I think we're going to close it out on one don't, which I may be the only person who believes this particular don't, but don't wear bright color shaders or like helmets that draw the eye to your head. You guys know like the Hood of Malak, it's like that bubbly green helmet, or like the King's Fall Raid Warlock helmet, like those helmets that have like a ball as the head.
Oh yeah.
Like I feel like they just draw people's eyes straight to your head, and that means the reticle goes straight to your head. And the same thing with the bright color shaders. I have literally done experiments on this myself, and I don't know if it's placebo effect or what it is, but when I wear black, gray, like brown, tan, green, like dark flat color shaders, I literally do better than when I wear bright green, yellow, pink, red, like these really, really bright ones. I do worse with those, and I think it's because it draws people's eye to me, and it makes it easier for them to spot me first. It makes it easier for them to hit me. It makes it easier for them to see me coming around a corner or running in a distance. And I may be a conspiracy theorist here, and I may sound like a crazy crackpot, but I'm telling you, use dark color shaders and don't use one of those weird bulbous helmets that like draw people's eye. I mean, I feel like it is so easy to snipe people who've just got some bright glowing green helmet. Like, it's like I can't help but shoot them in the head with that stuff. So that's all I'm saying. I'm going to close out on that one. I don't know if anyone else will believe in me, but I believe that to be 100% true. So I'm going to finish it off with that one.
I will say I'll use makeshift scarf and Thunder Devil if I'm feeling sneaky. I have tested the opposite with my Ugly Titan, which is an ongoing art project to just put the most hideous clashing combination of chroma and shader together. And man, there is no better way to put a target on your back and to reduce your entire team down to that one Titan who dresses like that and keeps flying past. It certainly doesn't help. I'll put it that way. I think you might have something there.
Yeah, you might just feel bad when you look bad. It might be like one of those things. Like, you know, you look ridiculous, you go out in public and you don't feel on top of your game. It might be the same way for the Crucible. We'll have to see. We'll have to actually
it's like going to work
numbers.
without your pants on, you know, or going to work with pink pants on, I guess.
Yeah.
You guys have that recurring nightmare where you wake up and you're wearing Sparkle Pony and everyone can see it?
It's horrible. It's horrible. I wake up just completely sweating and everything like that. It's awful. All right, well, I think that is it. We went a lot longer than I thought we were going to, which seems to also be a recurring theme in the Massive Breakdown podcast. Every single week, we're like, we're not going to go that long. It's going to be a light episode, and then sure enough, an hour and 40 minutes later, we're finished. So I don't think I have anything else to say. What about you guys? Do you guys have anything to add?
Guys, this was a blast. Thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time.
Hey, we loved having you, man. And why don't you go ahead and share with all the listeners, where can you be found?
All right. I'm FamousBirds, and you should listen to my podcast, Crucible Radio, the show for all things Destiny PvP, and also a bunch of other inside jokes that have developed over months and months, and I'm not even sure if they're funny, but I think they're funny. It's crucibleradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at Crucible Radio. You can find us on iTunes, any podcast app, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, whatever you use. Crucible Radio. Check it out. We got a big episode coming up next week. It's episode 100. We're talking new gameplay reveal, and we got a bunch of special segments planned. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
Next week is going to be awesome for all of us, honestly. We're going to have a great episode as well.
Joyous
gameplay reveal.
time.
Can't wait to do it. I'm sorry, Kutch. I know it hurts. I feel terrible for you, but I will send you as many pictures as I can, so you can feel like you're there. Even though they won't let us take pictures of the screen, is something that I just read on the latest invite. We're not allowed to take pictures that are directly focused on the screens. So,
well, I will be looking to screen cap you in the audience if they show any shots. So there you go. I'll make sure we get some rep there. I'm sad I didn't make the cut, but I'm joined by a throng of other very deserving Guardians who also there just were not enough seats for. So I'm totally okay with it. I'm excited. I've booked a meeting at work to watch the reveal.
Awesome.
It's on my calendar. If any of my fellow employees are listening, they're probably invited. So all good.
You'll be with us in heart at the very least, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
All right, well, I think that's it, though, right? We got to shout out Destiny Tracker, though, as always. Got to talk about the Destiny Tracker podcast, Destiny Down Under, RNG Cast, Rabbit Hole, Destiny Track podcast, and Lorecast, right? Did I get everyone? Did I forget anyone? Man. Yeah, I didn't
You got
forget anyone this
everybody.
week. All right, so listen to those
No,
podcasts,
not
listen
this
to
week.
Crucible Radio, listen to Massive Breakdown, listen to all of us. You know what? Just spend all your time listening to podcasts. Don't even do anything else.
There's so much good Destiny podcast content out there. It's insane. I literally cannot keep up. One other thing I have to do really quick is shout out Omio My O'Dubs. Did I get that right? Thank you for the support. Really appreciate you. He's a new patron this month, so very, very happy to have his support, and hopefully we're going to keep working hard to deserve that trust. So thank you. I've got nothing else. I'm ready to say peace out, guys.
All right, well, for Mercules later, you guys, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.